What if I told you that the most divisive moment in Marvel history wasn't divisive enough? What if the Civil War wasn't just about superhero accountability, but about an entire species fighting for their right to exist? Forget everything you know about the Sokovia Accords. This is the timeline where mutants have been public for over a decade, where Professor Xavier's dream of coexistence hangs in the balance, and where the choice between freedom and security becomes a matter of survival for an entire race. This is the world where the X-Men had to pick a side. Welcome to the war that split two species. When dreams collide with reality. Picture this scenario. Charles Xavier has spent 13 years building bridges between humans and mutants. The X-Men are household names, trusted heroes who've saved the world countless times. Storm has addressed the United Nations. Beast has testified before Congress. Wolverine has worked alongside the military in classified operations. Then Lagos happens. When Wanda Maximoff loses control and kills those civilians, the world doesn't just question the Avengers, they question every enhanced individual on the planet. The carefully constructed trust between humans and mutants evaporates overnight. The Sokovia Accords aren't just about superhero oversight anymore. They include provisions that make every mutant rights activist's blood run cold. Mandatory registration of all mutants above a certain power threshold, genetic testing for newborns, inhibitor collars for air travel, and government databases containing every mutant's abilities and weaknesses. Charles Xavier sits in his office, staring at the document that could either legitimize mutant heroes or criminalize mutant existence. For the first time in his life, his telepathic abilities feel like a burden, as he senses the fear radiating from students who've never known persecution.
My God,
he whispers to himself.
It's the Mutant Registration Act, by another name.
We are just getting started. If you're liking this already, give us a subscribe. Now back to the video. The X-Men face a decision that cuts deeper than any external threat they've ever encountered. This isn't about tactics or strategy. It's about the fundamental nature of their existence and their place in the world. Charles Xavier calls an emergency meeting that will forever change the course of mutant history.
The world is asking us to choose. Do we trust the same governments that once proposed mutant registration acts? Or do we stand with those who believe that oversight inevitably leads to oppression?
Xavier speaks, his voice heavy with decades of civil rights battles. Storm argues for working within the system, believing their 13 years of relationship building have earned them a seat at the table. Logan violently opposes any form of registration, his adamantium fist crashing through the conference table as he recalls his own experiences as a government weapon. Jean Grey faces an impossible dilemma. How do you register a cosmic force like the Phoenix that exists beyond human comprehension? Cyclops finds himself torn between loyalty to Xavier's dream and love for his wife. Nightcrawler struggles with whether his divinely gifted abilities should be subject to earthly oversight. The X-Men fracture along lines that surprise everyone, including themselves. This isn't a clean ideological divide. It's a rupture that cuts through relationships, families, and lifetime bonds forged in battle. Xavier's covenant includes those who see the Accords as an imperfect step toward legitimacy. Storm believing and working within systems to change them. Cyclops following Xavier, despite every instinct screaming against it. And Beast viewing the framework as legally improvable through proper channels. Logan's resistance forms around those who refuse to submit to any form of registration. Wolverine drawing on painful personal experience with government control. Jean Grey unable to submit cosmic power to earthly authority. Nightcrawler believing his abilities are divine gifts not subject to government oversight, and Rogue fearing her deadly touch being weaponized against her will. Tony Stark arrives at the Xavier Institute with the confidence of a man who believes every problem has a technological solution. He's wearing a specially designed suit that looks more diplomatic than militaristic, and he's done his homework on mutant psychology.
Professor Xavier,
Tony begins, using formal titles deliberately.
I've run projections on every possible outcome. Without some form of oversight framework, we're looking at a 74% probability of complete enhanced individual prohibition within 5 years.
Stark presents his case with typical confidence, but Xavier counters with uncomfortable questions about the historical success rate of voluntary registration in preventing persecution. The conversation becomes a philosophical battle between pragmatism and principle. Stark argues for imperfect solutions to prevent perfect disasters, while Xavier maintains that some problems require wisdom rather than innovation. Their debate highlights the fundamental tension between security and freedom that drives the entire conflict. Steve Rogers approaches the situation with the careful respect of one freedom fighter recognizing another. He doesn't come in uniform or carry his shield. He comes as a man who spent 70 years fighting for the same principles on different battlefields.
Professor Xavier, I've read your files. I've studied your history. You've been fighting for the same things I have, just against different enemies.
Rogers appeals to Xavier's experience in civil rights battles, acknowledging their shared history of fighting for freedom and justice. But Xavier challenges him on the historical pattern of promises of equality in exchange for compliance, pointing out how often such agreements have led to surveillance disguised as protection. Their conversation becomes a clash between two different approaches to achieving justice. Rogers believing in working within systems to reform them, Xavier suspicious of any system that requires his people to prove they deserve basic rights. The X-Men split along lines that surprise everyone, including themselves. This isn't a clean ideological divide. It's a fracture that cuts through relationships, families, and lifetime bonds. Professor Xavier sees the Accords as an imperfect step toward legitimacy. Storm believes in working within systems to change them. Cyclops follows Xavier despite every instinct screaming against it. Beast views the framework as legally improvable through proper channels. Wolverine refuses registration based on painful personal experience. Jean Grey cannot submit cosmic power to earthly authority. Nightcrawler believes his abilities are divine gifts, not government concerns. Rogue fears her deadly touch being weaponized against her will. The most heartbreaking split occurs between Scott Summers and Jean Grey, a couple whose entire relationship has been built on shared dreams of a better future. Jean cannot submit the cosmic Phoenix Force to earthly authority, while Scott believes they must work within the system Xavier has spent decades building.
Scott, I love you more than life itself, but I cannot register the Phoenix Force. I won't become anyone's weapon.
Jean speaks during their final conversation before choosing sides. Their personal conflict embodies the larger philosophical divide tearing through the mutant community. Jean argues that some powers transcend human comprehension and cannot be regulated, while Scott maintains that without accountability, they risk losing everything they've worked to achieve. Eric Lensher watches the entire conflict unfold from his hidden sanctuary with a mixture of vindication and profound sadness. For 60 years, he's warned that this moment would come, while Charles has believed in humanity's capacity for growth.
Charles, you spent 60 years believing in their better angels. Now you see what I've always known. They don't have angels, only fear wearing the mask of justice.
When Xavier finally contacts his oldest friend, their conversation carries the weight of a lifetime of philosophical disagreement. Magneto sees the registration as validation of everything he's predicted about human nature, while Xavier maintains that even humanity's capacity for evil doesn't negate their potential for good. Their exchange becomes a final reckoning between two worldviews that have shaped mutant history. Magneto's belief in inevitable human betrayal versus Xavier's faith in the possibility of coexistence. As the Sokovia Accords become law, something unprecedented emerges. A new underground railroad designed not for enslaved people seeking freedom, but for powered individuals seeking to remain free. Wolverine becomes the conductor of this network, using centuries of experience living off the grid to help unregistered mutants disappear.
Kid, winning isn't about having the most power. It's about having the most to lose. Right now, we've got everything to lose and nothing to gain from a fight.
Logan speaks to a young telekinetic during a safe house briefing, but the moral complexity is staggering. The famous airport battle becomes something far more significant when mutant powers enter the equation. This isn't just a disagreement between heroes. It's a preview of what human-mutant war would actually look like.
You fight for a king. I fight for freedom.
Logan snarls at Black Panther as adamantium claws spark against vibranium. Storm and Falcon engage in aerial combat that turns the entire sky into a war zone, while Wolverine faces Black Panther in a brutal ground battle that represents different philosophies of justice clashing. The most heartbreaking confrontation occurs between Cyclops and Jean Grey, as husband and wife find themselves on opposite sides of a conflict that threatens everything they've built together. The battle demonstrates the terrifying potential of mutant powers in warfare, while simultaneously showing the personal cost of ideological division within families and relationships that have endured for decades. The aftermath sees several resistance members imprisoned on the raft, where they discover something that validates every fear the anti-registration side expressed. The facility isn't just containing them, it's studying them, collecting data on how their abilities work, and building profiles for potential weaponization.
They're not trying to control us, Cap. They're trying to figure out how to eliminate us. Registration was never about safety. It was about intelligence gathering.
Logan explains to Steve Rogers during the rescue operation. Logan makes the most chilling discovery. The raft is feeding everything learned about mutant physiology into weapons development programs designed to neutralize mutant abilities permanently. The registration system reveals its true purpose. Not safety or accountability, but intelligence gathering for future elimination efforts. T'Challa's position on the Accords creates complex dynamics. Wakanda becomes a potential sanctuary for mutant refugees. But T'Challa's motivations extend beyond humanitarian concern. He's studying mutant genetics, comparing natural mutations to heart-shaped herb enhancements.
Your people and mine have something in common. We both know what it's like to be underestimated. We both know what it's like to have abilities others fear.
He speaks to Storm during a secret meeting. His conversations with Storm reveal the parallels between their people's experiences with being underestimated and feared, while also highlighting the crucial difference between chosen isolation and forced segregation. Despite Xavier's hopes that the Accords would lead to acceptance, they instead lead to systematic segregation. Enhanced individual monitoring zones become containment areas where mutants are required to live for public safety. The X-Men who supported the Accords find themselves administering a system that increasingly resembles everything they fought against.
Charles, we were wrong. The Accords weren't about integration, they were about preparation. They've been planning this from the beginning.
Storm speaks during a private meeting. Xavier becomes the face of compliance while watching his life's work transform into a mechanism of oppression. Storm confronts the painful reality that their trust in the system was misplaced. The Accords were never about integration, but about preparation for more systematic control. As the conflict escalates, Jean Grey faces the ultimate test of her convictions. The Phoenix Force, fed by constant conflict and suffering, begins pushing for a more direct solution to mutant persecution. Jean struggles with the temptation to use cosmic power to remake reality itself, while Logan and others argue that becoming a god who makes choices for everyone else would transform her into the very thing people fear.
I could end this. The Phoenix could remake reality itself. No more registration, no more persecution, no more choosing between freedom and safety.
She speaks to Logan during a moment of vulnerability. The Phoenix dilemma represents the central tension of the entire conflict. When oppression becomes systematic, at what point does resistance become justified? And how do you fight injustice without becoming the monster your enemies claim you are? Eric Lensher emerges from hiding not as a villain seeking revenge. He doesn't come with armies or master plans. He comes with documentation, evidence, proof that registration was always intended as the first step toward elimination.
Charles, you spent 7 years trying to prove me wrong about humanity. Thank you for finally settling the question.
He speaks when they finally meet face to face. His vindication brings no satisfaction, only the bitter knowledge that he was right about humanity's capacity for systematic oppression disguised as protection. Yet Xavier surprises him by acknowledging both humanity's capacity for evil and their potential for good, pointing to the humans who risk their lives protecting mutants even within an unjust system. The first major post-registration conflict emerges between different generations of mutants themselves. Older mutants who remember freedom refuse to accept the current system as legitimate, while younger mutants who've grown up within the system see resistance as dangerous extremism that makes things worse for everyone.
You're destroying everything we've built. We have safety now. We have structure. We have a place in society. Why are you trying to take that away?
A young mutant speaks to Wolverine during his arrest. The generational divide reaches a breaking point when young registered mutants turn in resistance members to authorities, genuinely believing they're protecting their community from dangerous radicals. Logan's arrest by mutants he's spent his life protecting represents the ultimate success of the registration system's psychological conditioning. The Elimination Protocol leaked government documents reveal the truth about the registration program. It was never about public safety or enhanced individual accountability. It was about data collection, genetic mapping, and developing what internal documents refer to as a final solution to the mutant problem.
I thought I was building accountability. I was actually building the infrastructure for genocide.
Tony Stark admits when he releases the evidence himself. The registration program was designed to fail from the beginning. Every restriction, every limitation, every safety measure was intended to create justification for increasingly extreme measures. The end goal was always elimination. Registration was just the method of cataloging who needed to be eliminated. Tony Stark, haunted by his role in creating the infrastructure for potential genocide, releases the evidence himself, finally understanding that he built accountability systems that became elimination protocols. 20 years after the Civil War, humanity faces its ultimate test. Mutant births are increasing exponentially, the evolutionary leap that will see mutants outnumber baseline humans within a generation.
20 years ago, the world asked mutants to choose between freedom and safety. Today, I ask humanity to choose between coexistence and extinction. Because those are your only options.
Charles Xavier, now in his 80s, makes his final public address challenging humanity to choose between coexistence and extinction. His words carry the weight of someone who has witnessed the full cycle of hope, betrayal, and potential redemption, forcing the world to confront that mutants are not going away and will not submit to permanent oppression. The registration system collapses not through violence or rebellion, but through irrelevance. Mutants have become so integrated into every aspect of society that the system cannot function without them. When they go on strike simultaneously and globally, the entire registration infrastructure crumbles within hours. Storm, leading a new generation of X-Men, doesn't call it victory. She calls it evolution.
We didn't defeat the system. We evolved beyond it. We became so essential that oppression became impossible.
An unexpected revelation changes everything. Earth isn't the only planet dealing with enhanced individuals. The Kree-Skrull War and conflicts across the galaxy show that enhanced beings on thousands of worlds have faced similar choices between registration and resistance. When galactic representatives arrive on Earth, they come as students. Earth's resolution through coexistence rather than elimination makes it unique in the galaxy.
Most worlds choose sides. They either eliminate the enhanced or the baseline populations. Your world found a third option.
A Kree diplomat who is himself enhanced explains. Earth becomes a case study for galactic civilization. The same conflict that nearly tore their world apart becomes the model for galactic peace. When Charles Xavier dies peacefully at age 127, his funeral becomes a global moment of unity, transcending species lines. But his true legacy is found in a secret archive maintained throughout his life, recordings of every conversation, debate, and moment during the registration years. The archive reveals something extraordinary. Xavier knew the registration system would fail. He supported it anyway, not because he believed it would work, but because he knew the failure had to be complete and undeniable.
The only way to kill an idea is to let it succeed so completely that its flaws become impossible to ignore. Registration had to fail spectacularly, so it could never be tried again.
60 years after the Civil War, humanity and mutant kind face their ultimate test, the arrival of an external threat that makes their historical conflicts seem trivial. When the Celestials return for their periodic evaluation of planetary development, they bring devastating news. Earth failed their test. The registration period violated cosmic law regarding treatment of evolutionary advancement. The punishment is typically extinction, but the Celestials offer an alternative. Prove the species has truly evolved beyond discrimination by facing a challenge requiring both baseline and enhanced humans working in perfect harmony. The challenge seems impossible. Rebuild Earth's collapsing magnetic field using combined efforts of every person on the planet. Baseline humans must provide technological infrastructure, while enhanced individuals provide the power and precision necessary to manipulate planetary magnetic forces. As Storm coordinates with scientists globally, as telekinetics work with engineers, as reality manipulators collaborate with physicists, the true legacy of the Civil War becomes clear. It wasn't about accountability or registration, or even coexistence. It was about learning that survival requires cooperation, that evolution demands inclusion, and that the greatest strength comes not from eliminating differences, but from harmonizing them. The Civil War with X-Men wouldn't have ended with a resolution. It would have ended with an evolution, not just of laws or policies, but of consciousness itself. The conflict would have forced both species to confront the fundamental question every civilization must eventually answer. What do you do when the future looks different from the past? Some civilizations choose to stop the future. Others choose to become it. The X-Men's presence in the Civil War would have ensured that humanity chose evolution over elimination, growth over stagnation, cooperation over competition. Because sometimes the greatest victory isn't winning the war, it's making sure the war teaches the right lessons. The X-Men's Civil War would have been longer, bloodier, and more complex than the one we know. But it also would have been more meaningful, because it would have forced humanity to confront not just their fears about power, but their fears about change itself. What do you think? Would the X-Men have made the Civil War more complex or more meaningful? Would their presence have led to greater understanding or deeper division? Could humanity have evolved beyond its fears without being forced to confront them? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more impossible questions about the worlds that might have been. Please subscribe for more what-if theories, as we are just getting started.